How's that precious baby boy?
He's doing well. He's healthy. It's just amazing, you know. People, friends and family have kids, but until you have your own kid, it's something else. You know it, but it's hard to explain, you know, having your own child, you know, it's just something. I mean, when he was first, I was the first one to hold him, and it was just, you know, when my wife gave birth, when we heard him cry, you know, like the first, you know, breath or whatever it is, he had a little cry, we just shed a tear, and now there's a connection that me and her will always remember. And I don't know, it was just a magical experience where it was, and it's been amazing. You know, he's going to be 6 months here next week, and, you know, it's flying. And yeah, it's something else.
Yeah. Can you put the mic on your left leg? Yeah, just because when you're looking at me, that's kind of more in the direct line of sight. How has it cut into your work and your surf schedule?
Not really as much, because my wife, fortunately, she surfs.
Oh, so, does she really?
Yeah, so we take turns now.
Okay.
And we have friends that have kids, and they do the you know, one goes out, the other one sits there hangs out with the kids, and we've been going to Sano and then Terramar, where I grew up. I have a key to the gate, so, you know, it's a community, and then the public staircase too, with all our friends there. On the mid-low tides, I can walk across, and it's just as, you know, even at Sano too, it's so cool, like the communities around, and we know everyone around, so it's really cool. Like they get to see your kid, and they're watching him grow up, and he's starting to meet people. And like yesterday, I took the day off, we were just hanging out. I was like, you know what, let's take the day off. She wanted to surf, so I let her go surf, and she was like, it's your turn. She was all worried about me because she surfed for like a couple hours, and she was like, oh man, I don't want you waiting. And I was like, I don't care, you know, I enjoy, you know, hanging out, and I'm running into friends, and they're meeting our son, and I didn't end up surfing just because I was like, it looked a little weird, and it didn't look bad. It was just, I was just like, oh, I'm good. I'm content. Let's just enjoy the rest of the day together. But
that's how I feel too. It's like surfing was such a priority for so long, and I got it so good so many times that if the conditions are anything less than great, I'm less inspired, but the other priorities have been bumped up the scale as well. So I'm just as fulfilled by all the things that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And if the waves aren't firing, it's not as much of a draw, you know?
Yeah. And you know, like my wife, I mean, going to Costa Rica so many times together and getting to surf some cool exotic breaks and traveling, and I've gotten her spoiled. So if there's any little crosswind, she's like, oh, it's not that good. And you know, and I've kind of found enjoyments too, like on the, you know, if it's not crowded, Southern California, it's crowded everywhere. So if it's all right, you know, like it's a little, but there's some waves. I find sometimes I enjoy those, you know, and but definitely, you know, I've had my days surfing, and now it's kind of, you know, I can't wait to see my son grow up and, you know, give him the same opportunities I had, and give him a better life. I mean, childhood than I have, which is going to be hard because I grew up so fortunate, you know, and but watching him get out there, and, you know, like any like relationship, there's sacrifices that you have to take, and that's where with, you know, my kid, I'm willing to, you know, sacrifice myself from going out and surfing, because surfing is such a what do you call it, like a selfish sport. You know, you're out there, you're in it for yourself, and you're doing all this stuff, and it's all about you. And where, you know, becoming a husband and having a kid, there's it's not about you, it's about you guys all together. And, you know, my wife, I have the easy job being a father. I'm sure you know that, you know, the sacrifices a woman has to do. So, you know, trying to let her get out and surf as much or do whatever she needs to do when she's takes it awesome. She never puts it on me or anything, and she realizes, the opportunities with surfing and me making boards gives us and the friends we have. And it's just a cool experience, sharing that with somebody, and your kid. I hope he likes, surfing.
Sure.
He's going to be around it.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to try to force it on him.
Of course, yeah. Well, it's funny hearing you talk about yesterday's experience and you prioritizing her getting to go surf. Because my wife doesn't surf, but I feel that same thing, to where if I'm getting to sleep in the morning, let's say, because like the way it works is I'll get up at night with a baby often. And then when morning rolls around, she'll get up with the baby and I could try to catch up on an hour of sleep. But during that hour, I'm just thinking about them the whole time. Yeah. I'm like, I'm not going to get a restful sleep because I can hear them downstairs. Does she need my help right now? Maybe I should get on dishes real quick. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, I just can't not be concerned about or prioritize, I guess, their well-being.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah, they're always on they're there, and my wife and I kind of have a similar thing, and a little bit the opposite in the morning because she deals with him at night, and during the nighttime he sleeps with us right now, and we're training him. We're doing the crib thing right now, but so she's hands on with him, needs to feed him, and she changes him, and sometimes I'll change him, but she doesn't bother me, which I'm so thankful for. Like, hey, it's your turn. Like, she's not, and she doesn't use it against me, which I'm so thankful for, because I know. It could be totally opposite, and she knows, like, hey, you need your rest because you got to work and do this, and then in the morning when he wakes up around like 5:00 a.m., she's like, hey, it's your, and that's when it's my turn. I drag him out of bed with us, and then she gets to get a little hour or two sleep.
Good.
And and that's my time with him before I start my work day. Mm-hmm. And it's just watching him smile. And
yeah. I know that's the funny thing too, is the middle of the night wake-ups everybody always complained about. I don't mind them at all. No. Like, that is such a small portion of my life and his life, to where you're going to have this, it's an intimate, like, middle of the night, hanging out, like, hopefully he falls right back asleep. But even if he doesn't, like, rolling around in bed, having that quality time together is a super rare, tiny portion of your life.
Exactly.
He'll grow out of it instantly. He'll never, want that time together again.
Yep.
And we'll reflect back on it. It's easy to get bothered by the interruption in your sleep now. Yeah. And wake up in the morning and feel resentful about it. But it's like, no, we're going to reflect on this time and be like, gosh, I wish I had that back.
Exactly.
So I'm trying to enjoy doing it.
Exactly. Yeah. That's where I'm just soaking it all in, and I'm just enjoying every moment. And it's something where I just know it's going to fly by fast, and I'm just trying to just capture every moment in memory. And so when he's, a teenager, or when he's in his 20s or even in his 30s like me, I can reflect and we can share stories about that. Yeah. And that's something my dad and I are now doing, which is awesome. And, we didn't talk about this before, but, my dad and I, we share a space at my factory. So he has a shop next door to my shop. And our relationship kind of got stronger because of that. I was able to, there was 2 spaces available, and it was like a 2-in-1, but we put a wall there and there's a door. So he can check in. I see him daily. Like, I saw him this morning when I showed up to the factory and grabbed a few things, and it's a cool experience. And now it's like, me being a father and seeing things, I'm trying to, it's like it's a cool perspective because I'm in the middle of it all. And my dad, I see that too, this is his first grandchild. So seeing that whole thing, and it's just cool. It's just
So let's get into that a little bit. What does he do for work? And then where were you raised, and what was he doing when you were growing up, and all that sort of stuff?
So he's a general contractor. He does stucco.
Oh, okay.
So I was born in Upland.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, Inland Empire, and my dad was born here in San Diego, and his family's lived in Ramona for 120 years. And they still have family, and it's in Julian, actually. And then in Ramona, there's still family there. And then in the 60s, when he was a kid, a baby, in San Diego, you're either were military families or you're farmers. That's pretty much how it was down here. And he was in the farm area, and his dad had 2 young kids, and he had them young. And he needed work, so everyone went up to L.A. So he moved up to L.A., and then my mom grew up in West Covina. And so they had me in Upland, and we lived on 5 acres when I was a kid for, till about 9, 10 years old. And then we had a family friend down here that grew up over in that area, in the San Gabriel area, and he lived in Carlsbad. And my dad was looking to get away from the LA smog, the hustle bustle. He was just getting over it. My dad did well in construction in the 80s and 90s, and he was in his 20s and 30s, and he had like 60 employees. He was crushing it, and the work stress. And he wanted to slow it down, and his buddy invited us over to a block party in Carlsbad. And I remember this, and it was right there on the beach. People that know Carlsbad, there's a place called Deanie's. It's right on the water. It's the only bar on the water, or right across the street from the water, and is literally one street over from there. And it's just, they blocked off the whole street, and everyone's just, all the adults are drinking, and kids are having fun riding bikes. It's summertime, and my parents are like, man, this place is awesome. And my mom's a real estate agent. She does other stuff, but she's had a license for 35 years. So she found a little 2-bedroom house a block away from the beach in this little community called Terramar. Yeah. And they fell in love with it. And I have a younger sister, about 1.5 years younger than me. And they gave us the talk, and they gave us the option, do you want to live here? Because you guys are going to have to share a room. And it was kind of like, yeah, this is awesome. So we shared a room, which was kind of weird, and that we were kind of becoming teenagers. And then my parents divorced shortly after that. I mean, that's its own thing. But I moved into the studio. My dad built an office space. So I had a little studio from the age of like 11, 12 years old till I was like in my 20s.
Crazy.
And I literally hear the seals barking. I wake up, go surf, and I'm a product of my environment. If I didn't live near there, I wouldn't be making surfboards. It was just something where I was just so influenced by it. And I mean, like we all are when we get that taste of, the ocean, the lifestyle, the Southern California thing, like there was shapers in my neighborhood. There was these surf bums that were renting houses super cheap on Coast Highway, just the next street over. And, they'd have block parties too over there. And it was just cool, like community, and young kids surfing. It was just a cool atmosphere where the blessing, and there's a curse there too, because a lot of the kids growing up there, get too influenced by the, drugs or other stuff and partying. And but there's always the waves just sitting there waiting for you. And that's how it was for me, where, if I was, anytime, I had downtime, like my parents, I played, we all played video games growing up, but then as soon as I moved near the beach, I literally just threw the video games away, and I was just at the beach. Yeah. And so I grew up there, and it's my mom's still there, and that's my wife's and mine, like our spot where we surf all the time, and we have a little community there. It's cool. Like it's home. It always will be home.
What a fortunate upbringing.
Yeah.
What a fortunate move, man.
Yeah. I mean, my parents laugh about it because I played ice hockey when I was a kid. So it was kind of like, my dad always tells me that. He's like, yeah, you were ice hockey, traveling, playing hockey. And when I was surfing and competing at like 13, I was playing AA hockey in Escondido and traveling surfing. But the surfing, my parents always treated as a hobby.
Oh, okay.
They didn't, like, I had to pay for my own surf contest. When I couldn't drive, they would drive me there, but I had to rally $30 to do a contest. So, but this hockey was priority because they were paying lots of money for that. It's expensive. Totally. I was on a scholarship too. I played up in Canada.
Wow.
Yeah, I quit when I was about 17 because it was just politics like anything. And it was just, my parents were going through the divorce still. And it was just kind of a weird time where I was like, I'm not going to become pro.
Right.
And
I felt, I played football like up until I think freshman year of high school when it got real serious and guys started like growing, puberty hit. And now these guys look like men. Yeah. And so, the seriousness of it, I was surfing at the time and I was doing that. And it was like, man, I really got to pick one of these two things. And the ethos was so divergent. Football felt so serious. People just took it.
Oh, yeah.
And there's career paths, and then there's money, college scholarships, all that sort of thing. And I'm like, or surfing is just so easy and carefree.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of what I loved about it. And I joined a club like the Oceanside Longboard Club when I was about 12, 13 years old. And that's where I met more longboard kids, because longboarding wasn't popular to kids.
Right.
So when I got into junior high doing the surf team, and then Carlsbad High School, which when you go to those schools, I've never been into other beach schools, but like I just know from friends, I went to San Clemente High School or Huntington Beach High School, and those schools that are core surfing, you go into the gymnasiums like Carlsbad, literally there's an old gym and a new gym. The old gym, literally all the Raptors are all surfing. It's like you get engulfed in this weird, like the sport vibe. You get the hairs kind of tingle in the back of your head when you're meeting up for the first time to sign up for surfing. And it was just like this cool feeling. And it was just a really, there was pride in the surfing. They took really strong pride. And the year before, when I was going into high school, they won nationals for the first, or they won it a few times, but that was the first time in a few years, because San Clemente's just dominated.
Oh, okay.
It was always San Clemente, really. And then San Diego, too. So there's these rivalries. So it was just like it was just cool. Like, it was like going to tryouts. Like, you got the nerves. You see these, like, guys that you see in magazines, like the local magazines, and up-and-coming kids, and they're ripping. And, I'm on the longboard team, and our longboard team was really good. And there was only like maybe 7, 8 of us. And of course I made like JV team first year, and the other guys were killing it. And then the next year I made it to B team. And then my junior and senior year, I made it to the A team, and where, contests have always been up and down for me, but I won a few contests, my senior year, which was awesome, and made it to nationals, got 5th in states and nationals. And it was just a cool experience. And kind of the community, the longboard community was really laid back, especially in the longboard clubs.
Yeah.
Whereas the shortboard stuff, they're starting to do that now with the, what do you call it, the surf ride or the surfboard crew or
West Coast Board Riders Club.
Yeah, that kind of vibe, the shortboard stuff. It's kind of like the longboard stuff. I mean, they've been doing that in Australia for
of course,
for 40 years, but that's kind of like how the old contest scene was,
Totally.
With gatherings.
Yeah.
And it's so fun. Like I did Malibu this last year. I got an opportunity to surf it with 5 other guys. So I was like, well, for sure I'm going to go. But I don't even care if I make it through it or not. It was just like going there, hanging out with your good buddies that you've known for 20 plus years. It's just cool vibes.
Yeah.
And
whose boards were you riding when you were in high school?
So I was Gary Seagraves.
Oh, okay.
You know Gary? You ever heard of him? Yeah. So he was mentored by Dick Brewer. Around the time Chris was shaping boards with him in the early 90s. Did some stuff with Mike Henson. He had a house in Windansea.
Okay.
And I never had like the Takiyamas or anything. My parents, again, like treated it as a hobby for me. So they were like, okay, it's either surfing or hockey. And then during that, they were like, we invested money into this. So you got to supply your own stuff. So my first custom board, I split it with my parents 50-50, or it was like 25-25 with my parents, and then it was 50 through me. And it was through a mutual friend's friend, and he shaped in the backyard. So I had to go to Mitch's, go to the Blanks, buy the blank, and it was when Clark Foam was still around, and got my first custom. And what I did was when I showed up there, I knew what I wanted. I had it drawn. I laminated it with tape. I had the dimensions, the nose, the tail, the thickness, the pintail, how wide I wanted the nose ball to be. I had no idea. I just saw something that I knew I wanted. Like those old longboard magazines, they had the Bruce Jones and the Dewey Weber stuff, which I loved all that kind of stuff. And I literally, but they thought that was cool. So they always...
They thought you knew what you were talking about, but you were just modeling it off of...
Somewhat. I mean, I think they just got a kick out of this young kid who's like 13, 14 years old, like so stoked on like surfboards and like... Yeah. So I was invited over to their shaping rooms, and I had no care about board building at all. I just wanted the surfboard and I wanted it. That's all I wanted. But they invited me over, and my parents were like, oh, that's cool. You should do it. I'll drop you off there. And they're like, yeah, drop them off. So they were kind of like babysitting me. Oh, I was sitting there watching, shaping the boards, and they'd tell me things. And that's what Gary did. I would go over to his house. He'd shape a board, and then he'd be like, see me kind of sitting there, kicking foam dust, just kind of bored. This is before cell phones or anything. I had those Nextel, whatever phones my parents had, like a walkie-talkie things.
Oh, yeah.
So they would text me or whatever, tell me, like, they'd let me borrow the phone and be like, okay, text me when you're almost done. So we'd drive, back down to La Jolla and pick you up. So he would see me there, and he'd be like, go surf. So I'd grab a board, have my wetsuit, and I'd walk down from there to go, surf. Come back, the board, he's doing the final screening, bags it. Parents pick me up in the car with the blank, and then I'd go to OSI or other shops around here in Oceanside, drop the board off, and the guys would be like, you shaped this board? Because they looked really good, and I wouldn't say, I was just like, no, somebody else shaped it, and they're like, oh, man. But then that's where I learned the glassing process.
Okay.
So I kind of accidentally got into seeing the process of stuff and just being around shapers. Like I had Mike Walker, Walker Surfboards. He doesn't really make boards anymore, but he went into wake surfboards. And this was right around Clark Foam time when it ended. And he does CNC stuff. So it was kind of interesting. I was used to, throwing the template in and working at a design with a shaper where I was sitting down with him on a computer. And it was totally different, I respected all of that, and then I won the Christian Surfers Contest in 2006-07, and I won a free Jim Phillips board. And I met up with Jim, and he told me, I'm not going to make this board for you unless you're here. So I was like, all right, let's go. And so I showed up the next week, shaped the board for me. And Jim, he's a really knowledgeable guy. He's one of the most craftiest guys in the industry, hardworking, crazy. There'll be no other guy like that, really. Maybe, Josh Martin, maybe. But just the amount of work and labor he does to a board, it's just crazy. But he educated me a lot. So I like soaked in all this knowledge. So when I couldn't get the Bro Deal boards anymore, and when US blanks started coming in and blanks were coming more easy to get, I started tinkering around with it. I built a shed. I had a vision. I had like visual dreams of me making boards and having a room full of boards. I was totally like, maybe some of my friends thought I was kind of crazy. My parents thought I was crazy for a second. Like, man, don't ruin your whole life doing something. But I had a goal, and yeah, I had this vision. It was crazy.
Well, before we get to that,
yeah,
something you touched on earlier before we started recording was when Clark Foam shut down. So it was 2005.
Yep.
That's just kind of when you were experiencing what you're talking about, but there was a void in the market in terms of getting foam. So it's funny how important that was. And now when I think back, there's probably listeners of the podcast who discovered the podcast in the last 5 years who may be new to surfing, who have no idea about that. And it was seismic.
Oh, yeah, it was crazy.
Like, not only for the surf industry, but it had ripple effects in the economy. I think the Wall Street Journal wrote about it, you know?
I was in Hawaii there. I don't know. I think I was there because, I don't know, randomly in Hawaii. And on the front page of the Honolulu Times was like, is this it? Yeah. Clark Foam, like, I don't know if my parents saved it. I think I was with my dad at the time over there, and I think one of them saved the newspaper there, but it was literally, it was like COVID for the surfboard industry.
Yeah.
Literally the supply chain shut off. So everyone was, the guys that had the money in there,
Customers walking by.
Yeah,
for listeners who don't.
Yeah, it's it was crazy. Like literally, the guys that had the inn were grabbing all the blanks. It's just like the toilet paper. It was that whole
That's
thing.
Right. Well, for listeners, again, in the sake of education, for posterity's sake, Gordon Clark all but invented polyurethane foam for surfboard production in the mid 50s. So, and I say all but, meaning there's a couple of people who kind of came upon this at the same time that were doing it simultaneously. But Gordon Clark was the one who got it to full production level, let's say, the quickest. And so he quickly became the world's supplier of polyurethane foam for surfboard production. So prior to that, boards were made out of wood. So this was a huge shift for the industry. And he was very proprietary about his processes. And so competitors were very, very slow to develop. So from, let's say, 1955 until 2005, so for 50 years, he all but held a monopoly on surfboard production in the U.S. Australia kind of developed their own systems and supplied that market, but Clark serviced the U.S., a lot of Europe, Japan when they kind of got involved in board building, Hawaii. And then for a bunch of reasons that are too complicated and you and I probably don't even know enough about, in 2005, he shut the business, closed it, destroyed all the molds, destroyed a lot of the records, all that sort of stuff, which would be amazing to actually sit down with him and do a full podcast, and maybe in the future that will happen. But ultimately, he shuttered the business, and that left a huge void in the market for the competitors who were small to scale up to try to service that, or for international foam or distributors in Australia or whatever to try to get foam to the U.S. But for you and board builders in the Southern California area who are just dependent upon that, all your eggs are in one basket, now don't have access to foam, essentially, until U.S. blanks and other competitors kind of built
everything
up.
kind of scaled back up. It was crazy. I wasn't in the industry, but I saw it because I was hands-on with my shapers. My mom's boyfriend was shaping boards too, down the street here at his house. He built a little shaping room. So again, like I was just around guys that were making boards, but I was hunting blanks for him. Yeah. And he was making me longboards for a minute, and I would go up to Basham's, and he's like, "Oh, they saved me some blanks over there. I can grab them." Or I was going to Laguna on Coast Highway somewhere, some random surf shop, buying a blank or two there, and it was kind of a crazy free-for-all time. And Gary Seagraves, he shut down and he stopped shaping for a minute, and then he started making designing molds for some biofoam company in Sorrento Valley near Rusty's shop area. And then, over the time it went out of business. And there was a lot of entrepreneurship kind of to revamp the surf industry at that time. And that was the time I was going into college. I had to figure out life. Pro surfing was not an outlook, and so I kind of took a seat. I stepped down a bit and tried to focus on like, what am I going to do as an adult? So I went to junior college, and I was doing business stuff, which I liked that kind of stuff, and economics, but it was kind of boring, and my mind I wasn't finding what I wanted to do. I mean, I was taking AutoCAD classes, trying to see if I wanted to become an architect or an engineer or something. And then a family friend mentioned, like, because I was in a car accident after high school, and I got myself into like holistic stuff. So he was like, "Man, you really should think about becoming a massage therapist." My mom's uncle was a chiropractor. My dad's sisters are massage therapists and a nurse now. So I was kind of like, have this background of that, and I kind of found that fascinating. So I went to massage school, and I was at that age where I was 19, and I was kind of pliable. So I could really just like absorb all the kind of new agey stuff, but not take it like, it was just like I could understand, like they'd make us crawl on the ground, learning sensory and knowing that we hold energy in our body, and like tension, stress, and when you're in school, you're receiving massages. So I was figuring out myself, learning about myself, like the tension and all this, and it made me and working in my sensory in my hands and the sculpting and the visualization of the muscles. And then when I was doing that, my friend Eric, who works for Axe Wetsuits, invited me over to his house, and he learned some massages. So I'd trade massages with him, and he was single at the time, and Daniel Thompson was living at his house, out of all people. I walked in there, and there's random like wakeboards there, and I'm like, what the hell are these boards? They look like wakeboards. And he's like, oh, it's my roommate, you know, he makes these boards. And, you know, I was like, oh, those are interesting. But we were trading massages at his house. He made me some like ramen or something. He's Japanese, and Daniel comes in, and he came in hot, you know, through the door, through the garage door, and he was just like, I figured out stuff. And I don't know who he is. He probably doesn't even recognize me either, but it was just a random time where he had an impact on my life going into surfboard making, because I was already dabbling. But this guy that I didn't even know who he was came in, and he was at that prior time before Firewire was a deal or anything. He was just still making his boards at Moonlight, but he showed me a way. Like, he was so intrigued by, you know, the golden rule, the ratios. He was showing all these weird geo things on YouTube and explaining this to us, and we were like, oh, cool. But that put a dent in me. So when I went in the shaping room, I was visualizing and understanding more and more the geometry on the surfboards. I had the knowledge on the boards, but the symmetry of the boards, like the displacement, and it's like a finger, you know, fingers have joints and there's symmetry, you know, the golden rules of things, the way our faces are, you know, symmetrical or somewhat symmetrical. And that was like an epiphany where I realized I found a way into creating. So surfboard designing for me is infinite. And at the time, financially, I couldn't just keep making all these weird, I was making crazy designs, and I understood what Daniel was doing, how he was breaking down and making little channels in the, you know, using the ratios, and it's infinite, the designing part. So it was like, for me, it made me realize it's literally, you can create all this stuff, you know, and it was just something, it just blew my mind. So I literally was focused, I was still massaging, and then I was shaping my own boards, and I started making boards for friends. And I was making weird stuff, like diamond noses with vector concaves, channels inside channels, rolled channels. And I loved the idea what Daniel and his dad did with the hatchet fin ideas, and I was experimenting and making my own fins out of those. And it was just at that time in 2010, around that time, and I was just having fun.
Did you ride any of Daniel's boards at that time?
No, I've never ridden any of his boards, but it was just so influential of his and inspiring that it was just I saw him surfing, and I would YouTube and see that, and, you know, great surfer, and but the ideas and the thinking outside the box in a non-traditional way was really cool. But when I got into making this a business, I realized those are not what really people, the market's not ready for that yet.
Right.
So I focused on like the simpler shapes, and I noticed that the simpler shapes were what we're selling. So like today now, like my One Love model is my most popular longboard model. Catchy name, but I found labeling names on boards, so it was easy for people to understand it. So I started labeling, all my models have names on them. They're funny names. I use a lot of rock music names, and or just music names. And I go out and I talk to people. They're like, oh, I love that One Love model. I drove one out there. Or, oh, the Gypsy Eye was amazing, you know. And it's cool to see that. And but the One Love is just such a classic board. You know, it's just round nose, single concave, squash tail, standard squash tail, and it's a user-friendly board. But I don't know what I was going on that tangent.
Well, it's interesting to talk about the way that Daniel is applying mathematic principles to this, what you were interpreting as like this total creative expression. Mm-hmm. But simplicity works in math too. Oh, you know what I mean? And so I think that applies to what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Is you can experiment and get super complex with all those channels and stuff like that, but that might work, but the simple things also work. But where I'll reset the conversation is, you're now talking about branding. So running a successful surfboard label, there's a couple of different factors. There's certainly the designs, and those have to work. Quality construction is important. Surfers need to get good surfboards. That's one thing. Branding it so that they know you exist is a different thing. And there's a third component, which is probably the impetus of our conversation. The reason why you and I are sitting here is the third component is running a successful business, earning profits from surfboards, utilizing that profit to grow your business.
Exactly.
Which is a detail that so few board brands are able to do successfully. And so the conversation that we've had here ongoing, meaning on the podcast ongoing, is that it's super expensive to live in Southern California. Surfboards are inexpensive, and laborers do not earn enough money to A, live in Southern California, but more importantly, B, buy a property in Southern California, raise kids, contribute to a 401k, have a retirement, go on a vacation once in a while. Exactly. Like all of that stuff, surfboards are not priced adequately enough to kind of fund that. But board builders, I'm concerned, aren't long-term thinking enough, savvy enough, whatever it is, to redesign the business to really do all of those things. So that's kind of where your and my conversation is, I think. Because you're somebody who has grown a small business in a small period of time to cover a lot of those gaps.
Yeah, and I mean, like there's that old saying, keep it small, keep it all, but there's a certain limit to your life too, it's especially the more things you have, like having a family and all that, it's another dynamics. And I just think of it as it's a service, and I'm making a product. So, the product is what sells, but the service is what people come back to really too. Yeah. So I put on all my hats. I try not to spread myself too thin, but I'm doing all of it. Like I still meet up with customers here at my showroom, and then I drive another few miles up the road and I'm back at my factory, but giving them the space and the, talking details with them. I think that's what I give them what I would want to know about what's coming with what's going on with my surfboard. Communicating is key, and relationships, and the communication is like you have, like for me, what I found, I message people. I mean, I'm always constantly emailing people back. Like if I get an email and I see it right away, I just email them back right away, just because I'm going to forget. We forget about things. Yeah. And communicating business too with my partners, like meaning like the shops I deal with, I talk to them and I'm trying to get on a habit and communication with them like every 3 months, just to see how they're doing, how my boards are doing, how the surfboard sales are doing. So I can focus on, projecting my own thing going on and what can I do to improve, what would they need me to do, and if they need me to do anything, and just things that I don't think a lot of surfboard builders think about really. I mean, well,
they're busy, spread thin. Yeah. They drop off that order and then wait until they get, wait till the shop calls back.
And that's, and I just think I put my own shoes in, and I realized like life, they forget about things, and that's where I follow back up with customers. If I don't hear from them in a few months, I'll literally send them an email back, just like, hey, I'm just checking in. Just wanted to see if you were still in the market of having a board. And usually they'll be like, oh, dude, I totally forgot about that. Thank you so much for messaging me back. When can we meet up? And I'm like, yeah, we can meet up anytime this week. If you like, just tell me a day and time and I can schedule it and we can meet up. Or they're like, oh, I bought another board and that. And I'm like, oh, cool, thank you. If you ever have any questions, feel free to message me back. Yeah. And I just know, like, I've never tried to push my boards on people because that's kind of felt gross to me. Like, I've had guys, like, out in the water here, and they're like, oh, you're ripping, like, you should ride my boards. What boards are you riding? And I'm like, oh, I'm riding my own board. And they're like, oh, maybe we should collaborate. And I'm like, it's kind of weird, like, things like that. And I let my surfing speak for myself. And, you know, like when people ask me what I'm riding, then it's like they open the door, kind of like, well, I made the board. And that's it. And then if they want to answer like, oh, what kind of board is that? And then, or what's your label called? Then I tell them that.
Well, let's back up to the timeline. You were doing massage therapy and building boards a little bit. Mm-hmm. When did you see an opportunity to stop doing the massage therapy and focus completely on wooden surfboards? And then when do you make the leap to committing to a space and all that sort of stuff?
So it was kind of organic the way it switched over, where I was working at an acupuncture clinic, a doctor called Dr. Sai. He's a Chinese medical doctor. He's from China. He's lived here for 35 years. He has a successful practice, and my neighbor growing up was a massage therapist and yoga instructor, and he's like in his early 60s now. He kind of was my mentor. He kind of took me in and kind of applied me and gave me opportunities. And so I was working with reflexology with the acupuncture. So I had my own space. It was like 60-40 trade. I didn't have to pay rent. I was in downtown Carlsbad where I could just ride my bike. I'd be beach cruise, walk in there, take off my shoes, barefoot, you know, just very, I mean, it was fun. You know, massage is awesome where as a career, it's really tough, but it literally just requires your hands and your body and your presence. And that's all it is. You know, there's no buying supplies really. I mean, like if you had to buy, I mean, I don't use too much oils or anything, but it's really inexpensive. So I did that for about 3 or 4 years with him, and I had private clients in Cardiff, Rancho Santa Fe, and, you know, I was charging a good amount of money for that, but it was, you know, they would fade off. It was a lot of older clientele. That's massaging, you know, it's a luxury. But I was already shaping boards, and they were looking to move into another building just down the street, but they were going to downsize the business with me in there, just like kind of shut it down. And I was like, they kind of gave me the talk, and they were like, Kurtis, we're thinking of closing this down and all that. Are you totally fine? We can try to refer you to another doctor or like another practice. And I was like, no, that's totally fine. It's totally cool. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. And they were like, are you sure? Are you sure you're okay? And I was like, oh, no, it's totally fine. Thank you so much. And at that moment, I took the leap of board building. But fortunately, at that age, I was in my early 20s. I could still, if surfboard building failed, I could get on my feet and do other things.
Sure.
So, and I was still living at my mom's house and paying rent. And it was around a little bit after the economy collapsed in 2008. So it was like around 2008, 2008, 9. My mom had to work up in LA. She lost her job here. It was tough times for everyone. Everyone had their own, like, we are all impacted by that some way or not. And so I was renting rooms. We were renting rooms at my mom's house just to pay the mortgage. And I was sleeping on the couch paying rent, renting out rooms. There's 3 of them. There's this back studio and the 2 rooms. And then I built a shaping room in the back. So I kind of was just like very simple living, no girlfriend, no nothing. And I was just shaping. And instead of my friends partying and going out, I was in there shaping, just like kind of sharpening my knives in my shell. So when I was ready for, you know, to go out, I was like, I was ready. And so that's where I took the leap of that, where I lived very,
modestly.
Yeah. And it wasn't like, like I could have, you know, like all my friends were like renting, or their parents were helping them pay rent or whatever. So they felt independent. I was still living at the house, but I was a block away from the beach. Like, I can't get any better than this.
Of course.
And it's my mom's house. And what I'm giving back into it, it's like, hopefully we'll be able to enjoy this for the rest of our lives. Like, if I inherit that house with my sister, we both don't want to ever sell that house. We want to, you know, we both were agreeing right now, like, if we do take care of, if we keep holding this house, we'll both live there, or, you know, whatever it is. Like, my wife loves it there at the neighborhood. So I was able to, you know, live very minimal, and I had like maybe my you know, my rent and all my stuff, my cell phone bill, my car insurance, all the, you know, adult stuff was like maybe $600-800 a month. I could manage that. That was like maybe like 4 or 5 surfboard sales, which was stressful at the time. And looking back, it was just, and I realized it's like, if you put your head down and focus, things will happen. If you keep dwelling on like, oh, I need this, I need to do that, you lose your mind.
Yeah.
But if you just keep focused and doing things start coming naturally. And that's how it's been. And my mom realized that with her and with her jobs and things. She was like, we've had talks about that. Like, I can't believe we made it through all this stuff, you know, no matter like with all the crap that we had to deal with, we made it and we're still here and we're, you know, enjoying all this. And then a shape in there. And then I was still glassing my stuff at the house. I did about 40, 50 boards out of there. And then the cops came and the fire department. My neighbor behind us just literally called the fire department. So the fire chief walked in with a bunch of recruits and one police officer. They literally just walked through my backyard.
They're only 2 blocks away, right? They're right up the street. The Terramar?
Yeah. Well, the fire chief marshal lives there.
Oh, yeah.
But, the fire department or no, they're a little bit in there. There's a bunch of fire department things, but they just showed up unannounced. It caught me like I was literally shocked because I felt, you know, violated almost because they just walked through the backyard like they owned it. And I was like, oh, how can I help you, sir? You know, like officer. And then he's like, we have a complaint about biohazard, something, you know, like smell and hazmat requested. And I was like, what? And I was like, I'm just doing ding repair, which I was glassing, but, you know, I was trying to play it down. And the fire marshal chief was super cool about it. And he kind of knew me. And he just took a good whiff, you know. And he was just like, I do ding repair all the time. He's like, should probably find somewhere else to do it just because the neighbor, can't tell you who it is, but I already automatically knew who it was.
Sure.
They're going to probably complain about it, you know, more and more. So we're going to be coming back here. So that kind of shook me up. And I had some orders, so I had to figure out, okay, what can I do? So I outsourced it for a minute, a few boards to somebody to get them done while I figured out things. And I mentioned it to my dad, and my dad's like, hey, I got this lot here that I put all my equipment in. And you can like pitch a tent and build and glass your boards there. So I did that for like 6 months, just starting to glass. And that was a whole curveball with like this time of the year when the winter time going into fall with the rains. And I mean, I learned so much with the elements, dealing with elements and making boards and then trying to make them quality.
So it was a lot that he owned for his business, or
he rented.
Okay. But there's no building.
There's no building. He had a shipping container.
Got it.
Where he stored his equipment, and then he built an office inside the shipping container.
Yep.
And there was no electrical, so he had everything off the grid on solar panels and batteries. And then he had to move out of that spot because the office next door was attorney's offices, and they were complaining about dirt, you know, getting on their cars, whatnot, blah, blah, blah. My dad's super anal, so he's always been clean about everything and respectful towards everything. But he had to move out of there, so we got a spot actually just down the street here where the bowling alley is on Coast Highway on the coast side near Buccaneer Beach on the other side of the railroad tracks. And I got a shipping container there, and I made a deal with the landlord there, and it was just, you know, under the table handshake deal. And that's where I glassed boards for like 6-7 years.
What?
Yeah. I could hear the waves crash in the summertime on these south swells when they're walling out. You hear, and it was just cool. You know,
So we're talking about doing it in the lot previously. The elements, the environmental elements were a concern when you're laminating, obviously. Is the shipping container any better?
It's a little better, but I mean, because it's solid doors, but you're still messing with elements, and it taught me so much. And my eyes are actually trained for that. So at my factory now, which I moved in there a few years now into that, I kind of like glassing my decks with the lights off. I have a skylight in there, and when it's good lighting, like during the day, I like that natural lighting. My eyes can see all the air, but there's no light pollution, the glare off the fluorescent lights. And it's nice and settling for my eyes. And I mean, I've trained myself to work a different way, where if I worked at like and I have no background in working at factories doing this all. I mean, I go shape for a minute for a paddleboard company, and it was just my friends worked there, and I had opportunity to make some fast cash. Come in twice a week for like 3 hours, shape like 4 or 5 boards, and then go back and do my own thing and make a couple $100, you know, a week, or like $300 a week doing that. But I have no experience, so I've learned by trial and error.
Got it.
And insight with my friends working in the industry, where it was cool. Like, I had friends working in the industry, and they would come over to my mom's house while I was shaping, want to hang out, and we would learn things together, really. Or they'd be like, oh, why don't you do that? I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. So it was cool. Like, kind of, I learned how to do everything the wrong way.
Yeah.
Now I have my own way, where I found, you know, little tricks, you know, I've learned. Like, sometimes, yeah, if I worked at a factory, or I asked certain guys, which I never liked asking other board builders, like, oh, what do you do with this? Because it just seems, I don't know, it just, for me, it just didn't seem right, you know, like, to ask them. But it would have been a lot easier, because like some little tricks using my planer, doing stuff, I learned doing thousands of boards, you know, and I finally learned that trick. And then when I'm telling somebody, which I'm very open about things, like, you know, like I love sharing things with people. And then I realized it kind of like, wait a minute, I learned this like 3-4, it took me like 2,000 boards to figure out this thing. And I'm just telling you this now, and you're going to pick it up and just, and I see how the surf industry can be like that with the older guys, you know, with the new guys coming in, and they're wanting them to learn their own way. But it's something, it's interesting seeing that, you know, but I appreciate every single moment. And it's cool now with the respect of, you know, the surfboard community with the older guys, and kind of getting out there now, because I've been always in my little shell, and people see my boards a little bit. And now, like, doing the Boardroom Show the past few years, it's cool seeing like these legends come up to my boards and, you know, touch them, and then they're tipping their hat to me, which was really cool. Yeah. Which is like the most awesome feeling. But they know, and I've talked to them too, and I'm like, we're only as good as our last board. So, and they're like, yep, that's right. You got to keep it going.
Well, you do. And that's the thing, is you do need thousands of boards under your belt to really get to a point of competency. And it's very expensive to do. And you were talking earlier about experimenting with the Daniel Thompson thing. Experiments are expensive. So it's like, if you make a freaky design that maybe, you know, doesn't work out, or even if it does work out, you have to then charge more on the actual board that you sell to cover the cost of the experiment. Yeah. Like, it's a tough business to get that many boards under your belt to even learn.
Yeah. And then when it gets to the point where you have enough money to do these creative things, you find out you don't have enough time to do these ideas. So that's where I've noticed the shifts, and I've seen the shifts of almost everything going on, like in the business level, where like pre-COVID, it was always custom, and I started doing some stock boards, and I've been carrying stock boards now for going on 5 years now, and it's growing. But I've noticed like customs during COVID went up, and then shops came over and took over that. So I was doing more shop orders during COVID. Now it's kind of going back to that, and it's kind of shifting, but it was interesting seeing like the things, like the shifts that you have to do. You have to be pliable in this industry. I feel like if you're too rigid, you're going to get stuck, and you have to reevaluate what's going on. Yeah. Because you, as a small business and any business, you're always projecting sales. So that's where the surf shops come into hand, really, where the projection on the sale and the fast growth. But, you know, if you're just doing surf shops, you're losing the sense of your local community with that. And you're in a production line of business, and there's no really right way or wrong way to really go. It's just how you want to see your brand expand. Yeah.
Well, somebody long ago told me, like, you have to have a business plan for whatever it is, whatever business you're in. You have to, because you want to be very thoughtful about the decisions that you make. So you design the business plan, but as soon as you open the doors, you throw out the business plan. Yep. You know, and then you're doing what you're talking about. You're adapting, being pliable, but you need the plan in place to get going.
And that's what I did.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the business itself. As you now are committing to a factory and kind of growing to that level, how did you think of the business? Mm-hmm. You talked earlier about having a vision in mind. And we also talked about your dad kind of being your accountability partner.
Yeah, holding me accountable for everything. And, you know, it's just like, oh, Dad, you know, like I have this cool idea and all this stuff after I had the visions of things. And my family supported me forever. They've supported me since day one, but not financially. They're not going to give me any money. They never give me money. And if I borrowed money, like I borrowed I borrowed money once from my dad because I had to pay a bill or something. And my dad made me write a full contract. And if I didn't pay it at this term limit, I had interest on it. And I was like, forget that. I don't, you know what I mean? After I dealt with that and I proved him, which was like something more like I wanted to give my dad, or I wanted my dad to respect me, you know, in that way where I proved to him I could do that. But then I was like, man, that's too much stress. But that's the point of his lesson. He just wanted you to earn the respect and to feel good about it. And no, and I mean, all the times with my dad being such a hard ass about everything, as an adult now, and we have these talks now since we're next door to each other, I respect everything he did for me, but it could have been a lot easier. But he taught me how to do so. I'm proving, you know, things, and now like, but yeah, he would tell me, like, I'd be telling him this stuff in the beginning. He's like, those are really cool ideas, but I'm not really listening to it all because you need to write it down. So next time, if you want to talk more about this, write it all down and we'll discuss things, you know? And then, so I was just driven. So I wrote up a 6-month, a 1 year, a 2 year, a 5 year, a 10-year goal, or 8 year and 10-year goal. And I was talking about, you know, getting accounts, how many boards I was projecting to sell this year, you know? And my dad's like, you know, it doesn't matter if you don't achieve those goals. It's just having them down. So you're holding your goals straight. And for sure enough, it was just weird. Like every little goal I was doing, I was reaching, I was hitting them, which is crazy. And that led up to the 10-year mark. I've been in business with the Woodin label since 2012. And it was a few years, you know, I just made boards and wrote my name on it. That was it. And then, and now this last year, this is the 11th year now in 2023, I have to reevaluate now, and I need to write a whole new list now because I've pretty much achieved mostly everything I've wanted, and create other ways of income too, and see if that works out and where I want to take my business. And goals, they're like, even my life, I wrote up goals even for my relationship, how I want things, you know, how, you know, my wife and I wanted to buy a house, and, you know, rent's so expensive that we needed to, if we could find a place to buy, let's do that. And having a family, and they all kind of lined up, and goals are key. Yeah. And if anybody was like, anything that you're doing, write goals. Yeah. And they're just great to have to look at. So you could obviously look at other businesses in the surf world that existed and where they made mistakes. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about how you designed your business. How do you, and then additionally, like, how do you design the growth? Do you bring more employees on? Do you expand space? How do you meet production? You know, during COVID, when more boards, there's more demand, how do you meet that production? So when COVID happened, like, it hit everyone in every single way. But for me, I was already planning growth. My business has been just an always incline, just steady incline, steady, maybe a little flat moment. But then, I mean, you look at it in a graph, it's always just going up.
Like 10% a year or 20% a year, or what type of growth are you talking about throughout those early years?
Starting off since day one as a business, I was just projecting at least, you know, I would do 25, 30 boards, and it became 40, 60 boards, and then it came 80, and then I hit the 100 boards a year, and I was like, whoa, this is crazy, you know, this is awesome. And I was always pushing, looking at that 1,000 mark, like, just as a number, just as a business, like, knowing, like, what is that like? Yeah. And is it even achievable? Is it even worth it? And I've talked to other guys that have done that, and they've kind of like told me, like, it's not even worth it, you know, this.
Well, at 100, you're doing it all yourself.
Yeah.
Okay.
200, 300, even doing it by myself.
Okay.
When it gets into the 400, 500, relationships, life, enjoying things. You don't have a life.
Right.
And, you know, that's where I took on that. And that's where when COVID happened, I took on a young guy. He was 19 at the time. I grew up with him surfing out front at my mom's house. He worked at a ding repair shop for years. I asked him if he was willing. He was wanting to, you know, be mentored by me and help me sand some boards. So I trained him how to sand. And this is all in the backyard too. Still, like, I would glass the container, and then I would go straight back to my mom's house and sand them all. So, and that's where the growth came when I started having him there. I had 40 plus boards inside a 10 by 16 room. Literally, and then when he kicked over a board, which I wasn't mad at him because it was just so packed. I even had a disc sander and belt sander in there for foiling fins. And he kicked over a board that was going to Japan, and it dinged it. And I was like, well, we can't take that to Japan. So, you know, I was like, well, I'll fix it and I'll just sell it or something or whatever. And he was like, oh, I'm so bad. So I'm like, it's time for me to grow. I've literally popped. Yeah. So every situation I've gotten to go into the next situation, I basically waited till things were happening. Like I was, you know, literally bursting out of the seams, and I had to make the next step. And so got the factory, built that out, spent a lot of money doing that. But
how did you fund that?
So all the money I've made with surfboards, I've literally just put it back into it. So I've used zero credit cards creating this business, which is really tough to do because it's easy to grab a credit card. And I know other guys have done that and they've done it successful, which is just more power to you, however. But I just did the slow growth, and might not be the ideal thing, but I literally just put in money back in, and I live simple.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, and
keeping
surfing,
expenses low.
I mean, living in Southern California, it's difficult, but at the same time, being surfers, you can kind of find ways to live simple. You know, we got cheap entertainment, you know, out front. You know, we got waves there, and like for me, I didn't have to drive anywhere, so I just had to hold down my mom's nest, you know, hold that down, help her pay the mortgage, and just go surf out there and come back. And you know, it's not like snowboarding where you got to buy a pass every year. You got to travel, especially for us. And long if you have the gear, you're set to go. Yeah. And but I put back into it, so I had money saved. I put in for like 30 grand into building out my factory, putting in the proper ventilations, the dust collectors, having a welder make special racks for every room, my glassing floor. I made some stuff too, and then even hiring my dad's employees to like do some drywall framing. I mean, I found it over time where I could do that all, but I'm working so hard making these boards, and I needed to get it done. It was worth it for me to pay somebody to do some of the stuff. I've learned that. My dad's always been hands-on. Like when I played ice hockey, when I started playing hockey out in the street, my dad made me my own stick. You know, we go on vacation, you know, with plywood. And then when I had to go out and play with other people, I was like, Mom, I need to buy a hockey stick. So he bought me a wood stick, an actual wood stick, you know, because my dad was one of those guys that he just didn't understand that. He grew up really, you know, poor, and, you know, like we would go on family trips. My dad would weld up a bike rack so we can go across, you know, to visit family in Colorado, you know, with their bikes. And it was just one of those things. He was just a cheap guy, which it's just the way he grew up.
I love him, by the way. Just based on everything you've told me about him, I'm like, dude, that guy's awesome.
Yeah, my friend's dad too. Him, and when you got those two together, and this guy, my family friend, he sold his company for almost $100 million.
Whoa! And
they're super modest. And my dad didn't make nearly that much, but you know, he's ran a successful business. But they were friends, and we go out to the desert and go, you know, ride some dirt bikes. And I had an old like dirt bike, like an '80s motorcycle. My dad never bought me new stuff. And they go to Play It Again Sports, and those two guys would go in there and grind the prices down on the used gear with the guy, and we'd be walking away with like, you know, BMX pants instead of motocross pants. It'd be like, you know, GT with the neon colors from like the early 90s. And this was like late 90s. And we're walking around with neon stuff. And these guys would just sit there and grind prices down. And
that's so funny.
So
I respect it.
Yeah. I mean, as an adult, I see that. And you know, my wife grew up like that too. So, but with her and her family now, like her brother and them, they buy like the Patagonia and all the nice stuff, but they make it last forever.
Yeah.
They spend the money for that, where I see that now, and that's like the surfboards, you know, we pay more money for these boards because, you know, they last longer.
Yeah.
You know, if you want the, you know, the cheaper and, you know, lower quality boards, which nowadays is not even low quality. It's just more of, you know, the fiberglass, which you're putting in it, and the color and the labor work. So it's cheaper.
Yeah.
So
back to, you invested all that money into building out the factory.
Yeah.
To fulfill the demand, because you had more demand for boards. And
then COVID happened, and it literally, that money, that 30 grand I put back in, I literally made that up in less than like 3 months back with orders, which I was like, thank you, you know, like, because I put in all that money, and we went on that COVID roller coaster, and with having Tim, we crushed it, and we did over 800 boards in 2022. And we worked every day. I had him work 5 days a week, maybe come in once a week if he wanted to, but I didn't put any pressure on him working. I just worked every day. And, you know, my wife, we got married in 2020, right after COVID. And I'm so blessed and thankful to have somebody like her, where she understands the sacrifices when we have those talks, you know, the sacrifices we've had to do. And she was always my, you know, the person there, just, you know, giving me encouragement, but saying like, is it really worth it and all this, you know, just reassuring me. But sure enough, through all this chaos, we got through this stuff, and business grew, where like, if there's no risk, there's no reward.
Yeah. So
I worked through this, and then having this showroom here and building this out, and having, you know, creating a layout where I could create a good environment for the customers. I'm on PCH. It's paid off, and it's worked out great. But it's crazy how things go.
So in terms of structuring the business in order for it to be profitable and sustainable, and for you to have the lifestyle that you want, you had one employee.
Yeah.
When you're doing 800 boards, it's a ton of work.
Yeah.
But you have one employee that you can rely on. Is that sustainable, and where do you go from there?
It's sustainable, I feel like, at a moment, but again, like, he left to go to Australia. I was telling you earlier, in January this year, for 6 months to a year. But I was like, he's only 22 right now, and I was like, dude, enjoy your life, do this. But it slowed down a bit. But if it gets back up to that 800 plus boards and growing this like as a small business, it's worth having an employee. It's totally worth it. But when you start having more overhead and more employees, the mess, it starts, like, I hate to have, like, tell somebody I don't have work for them and they're relying on me.
Yeah.
And that's where, like, my dad always told me, you pay your employees first, and you want to give them, like, I give them bonuses or whatever, you know, you take them out to lunch, you know, you treat them because they're there for you, and they're basically keeping your business afloat. And that's where there's a certain scale level. Everyone's, you know, if you're doing the mass production, you know, shortboard market, you have to have, but less is more. Less is more, especially when you're doing, I mean, you can kind of say these are boutique-y, I guess, but at the same time, the more hands-on you are in your business, sure, it comes at a cost in your time, but you reap the reward of it all.
Yeah.
You know?
And you can control the quality.
You control the quality, and you know every aspect of your business.
Yeah.
So, like, for me, even going into my factory right before that, I had an Excel spreadsheet of everything, the cost of everything. How much, I broke it down to, you know, I haven't weighed it yet, which I want to start weighing it, like weighing how many grams of resin I'm doing and put the cost of that. But I put the cost down in gallons because I was buying 55 gallons of resin. During COVID, I bought 2 drums of resin. I had, you know, because, you know, when the blank situation, I would literally buy like 20, 30 at a time. And then next thing you know, say U.S. blanks shut down because, you know, the restrictions. But Mexico was open because the other, the competitive business was there. And then they shut down, and then U.S. Lakes reopened. So I was ping-ponging, figuring out things, and just putting all my money back into the business because I had orders. But at one period of time during COVID, I had over 100 blanks stockpiled in my one room. That was just my inventory. I had 2 drums of resin. I had a drum of acetone. I had 6 to 8 extra rolls off my 6 rolls of fiberglass. I had 2 boxes of catalysts. I literally was, whatever I can get my prices lower with my relationships, and I write a check, and I never owe anybody anything.
Right.
So my relationships with all my my suppliers, they love me. Yeah. And they're reaching out. So being fortunate near a supply store and having a good relationship, I go in there during COVID and ask them, so what's short right now? What's looking like you're going to have in the next week or two? And they're like, oh, future boxes, we're waiting for another batch, but we're running low. And, I didn't want to take it away from everyone, but I would take as much as I could where they would be like, you can take this many. Yeah. And write them a check and do that. So I was literally just being able to hunker down in my shaping room, building that out. And during COVID, for anybody that stayed busy and worked through the whole thing, they reaped the benefit. The guys that stopped doing it, it was a really hard time for them to get back on the horse and go. And they were always kind of a step behind everybody, which, everyone had their own things with COVID. And, I got COVID and I was sick, and it didn't hit me that bad. I actually worked when I was sick, and I just had no employees there. But I just felt fatigued, so I just worked half days. But I still continued to work on boards to get these things out here. Because I had, when people give you money, like I try not to, I have some customers that put in an order and they'll give me all the money. I don't like that. I like getting like half down or a few $100s so they have skin in the game, and it's enough to keep up with my overhead with stuff. But it's always nice when you give a board out, you receive something. You both receive something. You get your board, I get the remaining balance. Yeah. And
There's I think it was on your website in text or maybe in the video, your like profile video, there was something that you said about being able to schedule at least 1 month off every year to travel. Like that's been a part of your life always. It's important to reset and to surf and all that sort of stuff. Have you still been able to maintain that the last year or two?
Yeah, during the last year, the last trip we took off for more than a month, about a month, was in last April, and it's coming up next month. Now having a kid, wife going to school, it's a little tricky right now, but we've got down to Baja for a week in Christmas. We drove down to Seven Sisters, and test out the baby, see how it handled. And it actually worked pretty well. We went up with we caravanned with a couple friends, and they didn't mind having the baby there. And but it's been crucial. It's like a reset button. And like going to Costa Rica, and we've done that a lot. Try not to shape boards. I've been invited to shape boards, and that's a cool thing. But at the same time, for me being hands-on with my business, I actually lose money doing that, because I have no one else glassing my boards at home. Everything's on pause at home, and then I go somewhere else and make boards. It doesn't make sense. Just the way my business plan is. If I was outsourcing boards, or I had employees building boards and keeping up with it, or somebody shaping some of my boards too on top of it, it makes total sense to shape boards. Other than that, so I've done that before, and I've just, I'd rather just take the time and enjoy just surfing and get back to why I'm doing this, and the people you meet going at it, the relationships you meet, and the people that you meet from those things. And boards are currency in the destinations that we go and surf. So, being a board builder and bringing some boards down there and giving out a board to somebody that took care of you, Gustavo, our friend Gustavo, the whole thing with that whole experience was just in itself, such a cool experience, where I went up to the Guanacaste area for my first time, and I was staying in Playa Hermosa down south, like Jaco area, and the person I went with was friends with Real Surf, with Bob over there, and I was trapped, you know, like we went up there because there was waves, and we stayed at I got the first class accommodation, and I didn't pay for anything on that. It was just like, whoa, this is awesome. And at the end of it, I was like, can I just stay with you and my buddy can go back down? And Bob over there was like, well, you can trade us a board. So I gave him my longboard, and then I was like, well, my flight leaves in San Jose, and I was like, how am I going to do this? And Gustavo was like, I can take you. And I was like, are you serious? Like, that's like 4-hour drive each way. He's like, I'll do that. And I was like, dude, what can I give you? He's like, oh no, you don't give me maybe gas money. And I was like, well, I'll give you gas money and I'll give you my board. And that meant so much to him, which was so amazing. And that relationship and friendship, I still talk to him. Like I just messaged him like a week ago, and we catch up, and you know, and I've seen his family grow, and the planted the seeds of all this stuff around me. So it's an amazing, you know, traveling, and we need to definitely go on more different trips too. So we just go experience new things. Right now, it's the Baja.
Yeah,
it's the cheapest. It's fun. Like we spent like $500, and that's us like camping and gas, and maybe going out to eat a few times, and getting to surf some really fun waves with no one out, because no one surfs in Baja. It's so desolate, and it's right there.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, tourists surf in Baja, but that's about it.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you get past Ensenada.
Yeah.
I always say, and it just reminds me of going back to the 40s. There's just rolling hills. It reminds me of Central California, farms on the beach, and then you go, you know, in the middle of Baja, it's all desert, rocks. And then if you run into somebody surfing in those areas, they're from here.
Yep.
So.
Did you and I meet in Costa Rica?
No.
Okay.
I think we met, I'm pretty sure it was at the Boardroom Show. I met you, and this was like probably like 2016, something like that.
Yeah.
And you know, like I forgot who introduced us, but somebody introduced us, and you're like, oh, I rode your board. And it was like Gustavo's board, that was my board. So that's again like the 3 degree of separation and this whole surfboards. And so it was cool. Like that's how we met. And I didn't know anything, you know, about you or anything. And it was just like, oh yeah, you know, like.
Yeah, I do remember him having that board. And you talked about it's been great to see him, his family and all that. It's been great to see him learn to surf.
Yeah.
Like when I first met him, he was literally like just at the full novice.
Yeah.
And now he's posting photos, like getting tubed and doing big carves and stuff.
Yeah.
It's super sick.
Yeah. It's cool seeing the growth of him. And, you know, now he lives half the time in, Amsterdam area, because that's where his wife's from, and better education. That's why they moved out there. But he spends a few months out there, and I was trying to work out something out there to get down there maybe this next month. But my wife's telling me to go, but I don't want to leave my family.
I know.
I feel bad. My wife's really encouraging me to do it, but it's just like I can't do it. I can bring some boards down there, pretty much pay for my whole trip.
Yeah.
But it's just like there'll be times.
Yeah, exactly.
That's where we're just enjoying the time. Maybe we'll go on some road trips. We're talking about doing some road trips, but definitely take time off. If you're just and what I love, what I do is I'm doing all different steps. Of course, you know, I'm back to start to finish without somebody helping me hot coat or sand a board and put fin boxes, where it keeps it interesting. And I mean, more power to those guys that can go in there every day and go into that dungeon and do the same task every day monotonously, because it mentally drains you. I mean, you're messing with chemicals on top of that. It's smelly, it's dusty, it's itchy, it's crusty, it's all the mess. But those guys that go in there and do the same thing every day, that's hard. Yeah. It's hard where I get to enjoy it, where I'm like, I have a schedule somewhat, but it kind of varies. Some days I call it the triple crown of things. It's more than triple crown, but I'm like literally shaping, glassing, sanding, pin lines. I'm doing almost every single step on different boards to get things out, but it keeps it interesting.
Yeah, I think the lesson for listeners or upcoming board builders, people building their business, is that design it. Like, don't dive all in, and then a year or 5 down the road, try to restructure the business, map out a design and a plan from the get-go. And that's what you've done really well is I'm going to need an hour a day to build a spreadsheet. Yep. Not 5 years after the business is a mess trying to figure out accounting, you know? So, or I'm going to need 1 month a year to travel. So how can I structure my business in order to have an hour a day to do the accounting and have a month a year to do the travel? Exactly. And build towards that.
Yeah, and it's usually around this time of the year because it's, you know, January, it's slow because everyone spends all their money on the holidays and everybody's preparing for taxes. And then February is the coldest, wettest, shortest month. So usually February, March is usually a time for me to get away because it's kind of slowed down. And even if I leave a month, I can get a board out the door, usually in like 6 to 8 weeks to a customer. But I tell them before I travel so they know. Yeah. I'm not just out there spending all their money on vacation, you know. Yeah. And pretty much everyone that does that, they respect that and they are supportive of that because they know that's like what we need. I need to clean my soul to get back in it because, you know, that's why you see, I mean, some guys, you know, they're a little rigid and, you know, grumpy because they're in there all day, you know. You're just, it's a grind. I call surfboard making, you know, it's glamorized construction, especially with social media and other things, because you pull out these little toys, these toys out there, and they're so pretty, and especially during social media, you're exposing it and the marketing and the part of it looks cool, and it is awesome, but it's work, and
it's undeniable.
Yeah.
How often do you ride other shapers surfboards?
When they come across, I mean, where we live, I mean, there's so many board builders. So when a friend's out there or visiting or something, we'll switch boards around. I don't really do it as much because I'm not out there. I have some old boards of mine from other guys, and I come back to them and draw inspiration, but I don't ride them as much as I probably should. But it's just because I don't have the boards just there. Literally, it's sad, but I've had to. Like, I don't have any of my number one board. I don't have my first boards. I don't have anything because I literally had to sell it to make another board, or I had to sell another board to get another board, and it was just, or to make another board, and it just kept spiraling where I just kept throwing my chips back in and gambling it, and it kept building up my chips and then putting it back, you know, no risk, no reward. So that's, when I go on vacation, though, and I get to ride some other people's boards, I find it is interesting, you know, like the way boards ride. Yeah. Because my boards have, I don't know, I guess because I'm hands-on, it's just, I get on my boards, I know what's going on. Yeah. There's no other connection than others. And then when other people are riding them and they feel stoked on them, it gives me a little like, good job. Yeah. Pat on the back and keep working towards that. Or when I have friends riding my boards that are good surfers, I ask for their feedback. Feedback. I want to hear feedback. I want to hear criticism. You know, when they say it's great, it's like, cool, that's not solving anything, so I'm just going to keep making the same thing. But I like hearing feedback. Like my friend Tommy, he's one of the best longboarders, innovative longboarders. He's a brother to me, you know. He lived at my house for a while, and he's the best. He gives out the best criticism.
Tommy Witt.
Yeah. And he just like, he makes up the surf terminology, like, let's slurp up the rails, let's bulk it up, you know, like, this will help the knife catch the wave a little better, you know. How about putting some concave, you know, funky, crazy ideas, but he has such good feedback, like, from his, like, with Donald boards, you know, Donald Takayama boards, Hawaiian Pro Design boards, he would notice certain things, and he would work with that shaper, or his friends that shape boards he's riding. He likes to experiment with all sorts of boards, and when he gets on my boards, he tells me things. The pig back here, I don't think you've noticed it. We designed that at my mom's house when he was living there, and I had him we put it on the ramp. I had a skateboard ramp there. I had him put his foot. He was like, this is where I want to turn this board. So I literally drew his foot around it, where the tail, and then I threw a template around it. So that's why the tail's so wide. And the board works great. But it's cool, like, having those good surfers, you know, and feedback to make your boards better. I mean, I can ride my boards and be like, yeah, they're great, but I love hearing feedback, even when it's bad.
Are you aware of who Andrew Kidman is, the filmmaker in Australia? Yeah. He has a new film out. I mean, literally just out within the last month, probably. I think it's called Big Sky. His company is called Big Sky Limited, and the book and movie is named after it. But it is all about shaper surfers. So it's really a dissection of building your own board that you are riding and like that relationship between those. And so he and Dave Parmenter are good friends. So Parmenter wrote a bunch of essays in the book and is featured in the film. Simon Anderson, George Greeno, they get interviews with Greeno. It's arguably like the best dissection of that relationship of building your own board. And
it's there's no other connection. I mean, there are great craftsmen and guys that are great with tools, and they stop surfing and they're not connected with it, but they're making still great boards because they've done the time. But coming back and getting in your boards, like riding your own boards, the experience on that, there's no other connection relationship. And when I talk to people making boards and they talk about making their own boards and, just for fun, I'm like, that's awesome, because we all need to experience that if we can, to get in there and kind of just hack away. And of course, like your first boards, unless, you're around somebody that's going to help you, like make your first board to actually come out decent. And they're all going to float and they will surf.
Yeah.
But it's just a good experience. And for me as a board builder, and it's like when I was a massage therapist, my business is like off of that massage therapy. I educate people. I'm facilitating education on surfboard knowledge to my customers. So, when I'm here working with somebody doing a custom order, I'm putting, if they buy a fin, or I tell them, hey, if you have a fin, bring it in, I'll help put it in there for you. And I'll educate them like, oh, the fin, you want it to turn a little better, move it back. You feel like it's dragging too much, just move it a little bit up. I'll put it in how I like it, but this is just me. And the single fins, they all have their, 1/4-inch increments. Moving the fin back makes a huge difference. But then giving them and opening their minds into their surfing and educating them. So when they're going back on their boards, they're learning so much more about themselves and the board relationship. They come back and they order more boards, or they're getting boards made from other people even. And they're like, oh, I noticed this on this board. I really like that. And that's awesome. That's what we as board builders have to do to educate customers, for their own surfing. That helps us grow, but on top of that, them grow through this journey. And that's where different boards, different, conditions, and that's where the quiver comes in. But you find what works great for you. You might like twin fins more than a thruster, and I might like thrusters more than a twin. The reason why is because I like to carry my back foot heavier. So, knowing like how people surf, and I get to surf with them, I get to know that, and I'm watching them, and I can kind of tell like, oh, you need something with a little bit more tail rocker because, you're trying to turn that board and it's not turning. You need a little bit of flick on, just little insights. And that's what I did as a massage therapist. I would listen to them, see how they walk, and then I would ask them like, oh, did you have surgery here? Because I feel some scar tissue. And they're like, oh, yeah, I had knee surgery this many times. And I'm like, so, you start.
The detail of you having the massage therapy background and how that relates to board building is so interesting.
Yeah.
I've never heard of another board builder who has that background.
There's Guy Takayama did that. But I know Guy, I've talked to him, and I've known him since I was a teen, but I never heard him talk about it. But for my relationship between massage therapy, it was just, there's so much correlation going on. It's like, instead of having a body on the table, I have a surfboard on the table. And when I build an order form, and then the client intake form for massage therapy is like their information, and then when the surfboard is on the table, the stand, I'm putting a recipe in there, and that's what I'm doing with the massage. So I'm creating a recipe for that person specific. The great thing is the people, when they see you, they're always happy to see you because they're placing an order. When they're seeing you as a massage therapist, they're always hurting and they need to feel better. And then they feel better, and the energy work in surfboards is so much better. and I find for myself, it's easier to sell surfboards than to sell yourself as a massage therapist. I've never been like, let me massage you, let me do this. I never been like, it's just like my surfboards. I let them ask questions, and if they want my work or they're interested, I'll talk to them. And the surfboard, just because I grew up surfing in the community, it worked out better. It was just
the difference between a good massage therapist and just a run-of-the-mill massage therapist is night and day. It's tenfold. Like, I've had massages that are just glorified back rubs, and it's like, yeah, that was nice for the hour, but there's no lasting effect or anything like that. But when you connect with a good massage therapist, it's like a life changer.
Oh yeah. And that's where, again, like what I was saying before, is like, if they can educate you too on certain things and give you advice, or suggestions, because liability, they're taking on, because I'm with them like that 1 hour out of 24 hours a day. So I'm trying to help them, give them that space and that relaxation. I'm not talking to them, and I'm working on certain things, and I'm listening to what they're doing. It's really grounding, where that's where I hate to say like meditation, but it's more like you're present. And that's what I do with the surfboards. And I'm working on a surfboard, I'm present, and I'm visualizing what I'm making and creating it for that person. I'm visualizing that person and fitting it into with them. And that's where I'm not thinking all over the place. I'm not thinking about, I got dinner coming here, or I got to go here and do that. No, you're just present.
That's so key. I don't think you can overstate the importance of that. Yeah. It's so easy to get away from.
Yeah, and when you go to places like, or just going to a surfboard factory and you're talking to a guy there, and we're as ourselves too, but like, and you have too many things going on, and you're not fully there, and you're like, and that's where I'm so fortunate to have this space here, because now I'm like, when I have my doors locked, no one can come into my factory. There's no distractions. Yeah, I got distractions on my phone, but I mean, it's minimal. It's not like, it's responsibility, but no one's walking into my doors, busting in there, and then I'm like working on things, and they're trying to talk to me, and I'm thinking like, I got to get this done. And then I feel like I'm an asshole, because I'm not giving them the attention, because I'm running around with that. And I've always respected guys that have their doors open at factories. If I went in there, I'd text them and say, hey, is it cool if I stop by?
Right.
And then if they said that, maybe I'll bring them a beer, or if they like to drink, or get them some lunch if they want to spend time to hang out for a minute. But I've always respected that, because like when my customers come here, I'm fully dedicated to them. I'm present. I'm not thinking like, oh shit, I gotta glass this board, or I gotta cut this board, or I need to get this shape done. It's like, I'm here with the customer. I'm present, and overall, it's healthy. It's healthy for me, and it gives the customer relax. They're comfortable here. They're not feeling rushed.
It is what Buddhists strive to achieve in terms of enlightenment. You know what I mean? Like, being present is key.
Yeah. And it's easy to get off the balance.
So it's so easy.
Yeah, that's where it's, again, being pliable. We all have bullshit in life that happens. It's just how we handle it.
Yeah.
And no one's, perfect or anything, and we all have our ups and downs, but again, just trying to get back on the pedestal and get back and ground yourself again and be present, and, that's all we can do.
Considering your healing work, I'm curious if you have any strong opinions about what to avoid in terms of diet and or exercise. What works for you? What do you see as problematic with clients?
For massage therapy, or just in general? Well, I mean, as we get older, I've noticed I've packed on a few pounds over the last couple of years. I was always like 160. Now I'm like floating 160 since high school, like 150 to 160 for like 15 years. And now in my 30s and family, and, metabolism slowing down. I'm not as physical as I was. I mean, I'm not surfing as much. You think, well, you work in the surf industry, you're going to surf more. It's kind of the opposite, because you're making boards for everyone so they can surf.
Yeah.
But yeah, diet's good. I mean, I should do better, to be honest. Unfortunately, I got a fast metabolism, and but I think really it's what was I going to say? I was just thinking that what was the other thing, like with the diet
and exercise, and then also things are there things that you avoid specifically?
So I try not to like skateboard too much because my hands, I've always done it because I was a massage therapist and my mom just embedded me like, those are your tools. You can't hurt your tools. So going into shaping boards, I knew that. So I don't get into too much physical things with my hands. But mechanics, that's the biggest thing I find. It's so shaping, I literally, when you're first learning, you're just scrubbing away, using all your body, not even thinking about it. You're just so focused on that. And once you figure out your recipe on how you make a board, there's no right way. There's ways of building a surfboard, but everyone has their own different ways, and it's kind of cool seeing that. But it's mechanics. So when I'm sanding, I have my chest out. I'm doing that. When I'm using my block, I'm not using my shoulder like this. That's rigid. You're causing all this stuff, and that's especially if you're paddling too. You're sore. So I'm using my whole body. I'm moving back with my legs. I'm using my legs, and my hands are just moving this much instead of this. So mechanics is crucial. When I'm using my grinder to sand, I'm upright. I'm not looking too much down. I'm looking and working it, and I'm using my legs. All my ground, my power is coming from my legs and my weight, not my strength and my arms. So as a massage therapist, that's what you have to do to keep your tools, because I'm using my hands. So I save my fingers and my wrist and my whole hand for the details. So I'm using that instead of using I'm using all sanding a board. Like, no, I try to use as much tools as possible that I've made, or I like power tools that I have. So I'm saving my hands for the detail work. So mechanics is crucial. And longevity, if we're surfing all the time, it's like all those old surfers, they stopped surfing because they got frozen shoulder.
Yeah.
And, I'm starting to feel that. I started feeling that a few months ago. And I was just talking to another kid that's a really good surfer. Yesterday, I ran into him, and he's filming. He works for another, a company, and he's filming another surfer. And he's just like, yeah, I had to take a break for a month because my shoulder hurts. He's only 27. But he's a crazy, he surfs for 6-7 hours straight. Age, it catches up to us all. So I was telling him it went away, but I was like, hey, if you're gonna keep surfing like that, it's gonna come back. So you got to address it. So do some mobility exercises, just moving, light stretching exercises, which I should be doing more, but I'm not as hard on my body as so I'm not overdoing my shoulders, because I want to last forever. And that's where arthritis happens. I mean, some of it's genetics and diet, but it's wear and tear on your body. Like, my dad has back problems from all the years carrying concrete and stucco and, hands-on, throwing pails. My dad shrank 2 inches.
Really?
Yeah. And he's only my dad's young too. He's 62, and he's not hands-on. He hasn't done on-the-job stuff in years, decades. But from when he was 19, learning it, he carried 290-pound, things on his shoulders, carry those over, and now his back, he started having back problems and knee problems in his mid-30s. I mean, maybe he was a little overweight for his time, because he was probably about 190, 200, a little heavier than me, but it was more muscle strength. But he started having back problems, knee problems. So seeing that, knowing not to overdo it, and stress adds up to tension. So, but mechanics is crucial in anything that physical that we're doing. Surfing too. I mean, surfing mechanics is critical, on how much load you're putting on your knee, and with all these advanced things with, guys instructing giving people methods of learning or figuring out better mechanics for long-term efficiency. Because guys that have interesting styles, over time they're going to start having problems with their knees or issues, and it's going to catch up to them. They might have a cool style, but their knees are going to pop, or it's a matter of time, or something's going to happen.
Yeah.
So
It's all great advice.
Live and learn.
Yeah. Or listen to you and learn.
Listen, learn, yeah. Either way, just learn.
2 final questions. One is, if you were to order any surfboard from anybody on the planet, what would you get?
George Greeno spoon. Something with the way those curves are on that thing, they're sexy. I mean, I've made some, and I just drew inspiration off of it. I've seen them up close, but I've never got to touch them. I've seen them at the museums, or what do you call it? I forgot who was doing that down in San Diego. There was a bunch of them on display, and I have a book.
Was it Kenvin?
Yeah, Kevin.
Surfcraft.
Yeah, but they had it at the Balboa.
Yeah, I think it was called Surfcraft or something like that.
It's
Richard Kenvin.
I have the book here too, underneath here.
Yeah, there. It says Surfcraft, Designs and Culture of Board Riding.
I think I maybe bought the book there too, but this is many years ago. But I kneeboarded for a bit. I popped my ankle. I was doing some like semi-finless stuff. I made a kind of like a Simmons-shaped cockpit board, semi-flex tail, experimenting again. This was like the experimenting. And I cut off the plastic FCF or future fins, and I made little tiny nubbies, kind of like the John Wagner bluegill kind of fin, but I put a little sharp edge on it. I don't know what but I wanted that idea, and it's like 5'4", and I'm going left, right. I'm regular foot, so I'm riding the right, and I'm spinning it, but then I still got traction, and I'm lower into the board, the surface with that cockpit, so I'm locked in. I can grip and slide and traction, and then I went left. And I'm going left, and I spun it one way. I think I spun it like this. I spun it a weird way, and my back ankle just popped. And I literally I was like screaming, my leg locked in. I had no leash on it, so I hit and smashed the cliff where I Terramar at high tide. And literally, I'm just like cringing. My tongue was going rigid, like I was gonna have a seizure or something. It was just like my body was just spasming. And I was like, holy crap, I'm like, my leg, is it broken? Or I was just expecting my leg to look one direction, because it felt like that numb and tingle. And I look at my leg and I'm like, okay, it's fine, okay. So I go swim back, grab the board, and I took a few days off and I just wrapped it up, and I go back out and surf. And I was like longboard. I got some footage of me like hanging 10 with a strap on my leg. And it was just, all I could do was just hang 10. And I was like 160 then, so I'm on like a 10-foot board just hanging 10 like nothing.
Right.
And I couldn't turn worth shit because my back foot is just hurting, so I just barely do any turning. So I started making knee boards. I started kneeboarding that same board, having fun, and then I started making knee boards. And then one of my Japanese clients saw me kneeboarding, and he was like, hey, I want to order a knee board. I have a customer that wants a knee board. So it worked out kind of like having orders, making boards, it made me go down a rabbit hole and start learning a whole other aspect of surfing, kind of back to the beginnings of all of our surfing with the boogie board.
Yeah.
And then doing more research with George Greeno and the spoon. And then I had a customer, I never got to make one just for myself right away. I had a customer in La Jolla that bought some, his dad had a Greeno, original Greeno, and he's an old 70s kneeboarder, and the guy was like a couple years younger than me, and he had a McCallum spoon, and he wanted me to make him one. He just hit me up, which was cool. I was like, yeah, I'll do it, and charged only $1,200 or something for it, which all the amount of time I did on it. But it was an experience where, and it taught me a lot, and I made myself one after that, and it was super fun. I'm actually planning to make one here soon. I got the blank for it, and during this slower time right now before it kicks up in the summer, I want to make one and have it hanging up in here, and just to have some the curves and the it has this old 50s. I mean, it's from this late 60s, but the curves the cars in the 50s. It has this really cool sci-fi spacecraft thing. It's just so cool. And but if I had to get one from anybody, it would be him. And it was just his upbringing kind of, I mean, as a way, you know, he grew up in Rincon, and he grew up just making the boards and foiling the fins out in the backyard or on the side there. And I kind of could relate to that, where I was at my mom's backyard just grinding away, and then I'd just run out to the front yard and go surf and experiment. And there's something there. And he had such an influence on the whole industry. And even when he innovated all these fin designs, we're still using all that stuff, you know, and it's so cool. If I had to meet him and get a board made, that's like the icing on the cake.
You got to see the new Kidman film.
Yeah, that's what I got. What's it called? Big
Sky Limited.
Big Sky, okay.
I'll send it to you.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
But yeah, it's exactly what you're talking about. Yeah. So, and it's great just to see footage of him and hear him now.
Yeah.
Current day, you know?
Yeah, no, it's just, he's such an interesting guy and simple guy.
Yeah.
Which that guy could have made millions of dollars in this industry, and he walked away from it all and just lived a simple life. And he's an innovator. That's what those innovators do. You know, they're so eccentric that they wouldn't trade anything to just to live their life the way they are.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's a good lesson. Final question is, what was the last surfboard that you rode? What are you riding now?
So the last one I rode was my lead sled model. And it's I have one back here. It's kind of an evolvement style, transition year longboard, where a little bit more foiled out, like Aussie style, where meaning like it's thinner rails, flatter nose rocker. It has a slight pulled down tail at the end, not as much belly. There's still roll, so you can really crank turns on it. I've been on a kick a little bit designing some of my boards, putting a little bit of, hidden down rail down the tail, trying to push it. I mean, and I see a lot of guys doing that now in the longboard ring. You know, I think I saw like Tyler Warren just post a photo of doing a board that style. And it's kind of, there's only so much we can do with these single fin longboards. And, you know, we all grew up, our generation on the longboard surfers, we all grew up riding these high performance boards. You know, they're basically stretched out shortboards. You know, I mean, they can't turn as well, and then the noses are so wide they catch when you're turning them, so there's a certain limit. I mean, the fun thing about them is you can pop the fin out and do like a little helicopter 360 spin. They're super fun, but the single fin classic longboards, there's only so much you can do, like maneuvering them. There's some great boards coming out right now from a lot of guys. It's just more of taking things and kind of putting a little modern twist to the idea.
Yeah.
And that's where the, you know, progressive down rail tail right behind the fin. And that's kind of like what Nat Young was doing with like some of his boards right when they were transitioning, putting a little, you know, right when they were making shorter boards, like from 10 foot, 9 foot to 8 foot to 7 foot. And they didn't know about, you know, putting an edge on the tail, or, you know, and some guys poo-poo it, you know, still with the down rail on a longboard. But it's just, it's all about experimenting and having fun. And, you know, I'm as a creator and a designer in a way, you know, I like to draw influences by everyone around me. Like here, growing up here in Oceanside, or in Carlsbad, Oceanside, North County, as a longboarder, you could not be influenced by Donald Takayama. And the high performance boards, you know, you got Mike Henson too, you know, and all the history, all the rich history of Southern California, all these little pockets, you know, Hermosa Beach, Seal Beach, you know, Surfrider Beach, you know, Bruce Jones and the Russell crew and all that. You know, you got these little all these little pockets here, and Donald had a huge influence, and it's. I just draw influence. I make some down rail boards. I'm experimenting with down rail noses, little single fin entry, flat entries, and just there's so many creative ideas. I hate for me to pigeon myself into like a couple designs.
Yeah.
I'm always sitting there, and I see somebody makes a cool board. I'm like, I got to experiment. I want to make myself something like that, and acknowledging how they're doing it, and you know, it's interesting. It keeps the evolvement of your own ideas going on, and creating and kind of throwing stuff on a wall and seeing what sticks in the market of mine. Like my One Love model, I've made 1,000 of those probably now, and I love it. But it's like I'm already moved away from that.
Sure.
But they sell.
Yeah.
So I whatever the people want, I'll do it.
Yeah.
So
Billy Joel still has to play Piano Man every time he performs.
Well, but at the same time, like those guys, those old rock stars that do that, most of the time, they know that and they acknowledge that. Yeah. But it's like something where it's like, yeah, I was a kid when I made this, and I didn't know as much as I do now. But hey, it's the vibe, and that's what carries on. It's awesome. That's exactly like, you know, you respect the people like it. Just give them more of it.
Yeah, totally. Right on, Kurtis. Thank you so much, man. I'm thrilled to see the success of your business and all the growth, and you've done a great job of kind of capturing it and doing all the hard work to make it happen.
Never stops.
No, it doesn't.
Never stops. Day by day, we're only good as our last board, and don't bang a buck off a board. That's how what somebody told me back in the day. Never bang a buck off a board. Just keep creating, and you know, keep yourself humble about it, and you'll enjoy it.
Good for you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.